Welcome to Milestone Moments, the show where we explore the journeys that lead to success. I'm Sheila Slick, your host and founder of 5 Milestones. In every episode, we will bring you insights from the minds of entrepreneurs, leaders, and experts who will share not just their expertise, but the milestone moments that have reshaped their journeys and led to significant achievements. So if you're looking for motivation, you're in the right place. Subscribe now and discover the milestones that mark the path to success. Welcome to another episode of Milestone Moments in Business and Leadership. I'm your host, Sheila Slick, and today my special guest is Alan Paul. For the past 30 years, Alan has been passionately involved in nurturing and empowering creatives within the church and broader community. His work includes writing books, creating devotionals for YouVersion, performing with jazz and soul legends, hosting and guesting on podcasts, as well as speaking at numerous events. Welcome to the show, Alan.
Thank you so much, Sheila. I'm so looking forward to this conversation.
You are a seasoned creative. Talking about that, you have performed alongside jazz and soul legends. You've written many books. You have over 500 podcast episodes. But before all of that, like 30 years ago, 10 years ago, what was that version of you that led you to do what you do today?
Well, first of all, I wanted to say thank you for using the word seasoned because whenever you think of seasoning, you can say something is getting better with time. It tastes better over time. So when you think about my life in terms of what brought me to this stage, I always start with these 4 words. I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a creative, and I'm forgiven. So it kind of gives me a space to kind of get into all these little areas that lead you to where I am now without giving you a long backstory. So husband and father obviously goes to my family. And that's where, honestly, all this started. My mother being a music teacher, my father being a dentist and an entrepreneur in his own right, running his own practice. So my work ethic and my desire to love music all came from my family. And that's what led me through high school, through college, becoming a jazz musician after getting my degree. All of that was just basically me working out what my family put me in, growing up in Pensacola, Florida, Northwest Florida, where I grew up, small town, know everybody, and everyone's so supportive. Now, the creative side, of course, also goes from music, but also books. My father and my mother having books all over the place. So I was writing and, the whole thing when you're trying to make poetry and, your school projects. And I just fell in love with the written word. So that kind of worked it out in terms of becoming an author later in life. And finally, the forgiven part is where the church comes in. That is where my faith comes in. And all of these things kind of wrap around me growing up in church, playing because my mother made me play. She's like, I don't want to play these new songs. You have to learn them. So I had to force myself to learn this gospel thing that I didn't even know anything about because I was taught classically actually at the beginning. So all of these things kind of wrapped around growing up in Pensacola, Florida, being trained and nurtured by my parents to love music and to love art and to love knowledge so that I became a teacher like my mother was a teacher. For 8 years, I was in the public school system. So all that led up to the point where I did become a podcaster, did become an author, did become a professional musician, but it's because of the foundation that my parents set for me all those years ago in Pensacola.
No medical degree. You didn't go in a dentistry or the sciences.
I have a story about that if you want to hear it, just how my father made it clear that I was not supposed to be the one to become a medicine or dentist. He, I took him out to dinner, maybe in my 20s or 30s. And my father's an amazing man, but he's also straight to the point. And so I believe I was telling him, something about, oh, I knew I, want to help you in your dental practice and help you continue your legacy. And he said, son, as soon as you touched the piano, I knew you weren't the one. Take it, whether it was a compliment or an insult, I don't know.
Oh, well, do you have siblings?
Yes, I do. I have a brother and a sister, and neither one. Well, actually, my sister did go into close speech pathology, so I guess you could say some of the medical But no, neither one of us wanted to be, none of us wanted to become a dentist. And my dad is actually still practicing as we're speaking. Thank goodness he's still healthy and still practicing. He is just a workhorse and loves what he does and has been a pillar of that community. So again, that's where I get a lot of my desire to help others, is because I saw how he worked it out through his profession.
And your mother too, she gave back, she taught. And so what a wonderful combination. Thank you for sharing that backstory.
My pleasure.
So throughout your creative journey, was there a time when things got hard, especially when you're turning it into a career? And how did working through it shape who you are today and the way that you lead others?
I love this because mentioning that it got hard is almost sometimes where I think the rags to riches story, it's easy to say, oh, well, I started from nothing and then it just all appeared out of like this overnight success. And it was hard because for so many years, I assumed there was one specific path that I was supposed to follow. Now, coming out of college, I thought that was being a music teacher. As I mentioned, my mother was a music teacher. I was in band. I just said, well, okay, well, that's what I'm going to do. And I became a music teacher in elementary schools because I thought that high school was way too hard and I didn't want to march outside with the high school students anymore. So I did elementary school. So the hard part of that was finding out that I had these different areas of my brain and my life that, even though I love the kids, and I will never say education was a distraction or not the thing, it was the thing. But I also had this performance thing. I had played in bands in college, and I felt this kind of disconnect, right? Where I couldn't really get to the creative side or the more expressive side through creating in this classroom because you had to do everything for the kids at their level. And the same thing for my church world. I was rushing from the classroom to rush to do a choir rehearsal. So my brain was immediately split. On top of that, my family, my son and my daughter were going to the same school that I was teaching in. You would think that would be a good thing, but it's also where they expect you to be the parent and the teacher at the same time. And I was like, this is too much. So all that to say, Sheila, at one point I finally said, I think I'm not supposed to be here. And I ended up resigning from my teaching position to become a full-time homeschool dad and a part-time everything else. So that was where those first career spot where it's like, I think I'm supposed to do something different, but I have no idea how to figure this out. So that was a navigating 1 year at a time. Okay, how do I train and teach my kids? How do I handle making money and still paying the bills? How do I handle becoming now a freelancer and becoming someone that can like work in this kind of like part-time position in my religious organization? All of that was about kind of murky. So I would say the hardest part is figuring it out one step at a time when you think it's supposed to go one specific way and the whole plan is written out for you. And then mid journey, you're like, wait, course correction. And the map just kind of gets crumbled up in your hand. You're like, okay, throw that map out. We have to draw a new map, figure out where it goes. So that was just one example of where, it got harder than I thought, faster than I thought it would.
So now you were a teacher. Now give me an example as a freelancer because that's challenging too.
Oh, 100%. Because as I mentioned, I had no idea how to navigate as a freelancer, especially as a musician. So all this time, just to give you a little bit, tiny more backstory, I was working in my church and I did eventually become a full-time position in that church. So, just like most places, like I said, you have to figure things out. Now I have different responsibilities. Now I have a full-time career in this. And I thought, again, the plan is set. Now why in the world God has jokes and just they say if you want to make God laugh to give him your plans. So once again I'm in a situation where I think things are going the right direction and then I get a little nudge in my head that said maybe this is not the place for you again. I was like, no, I already did this. I've already stepped away from one career. I don't want to step away again. But it wouldn't go away, and so this all led to me finally at a certain point handing my then assistant pastor, or kind of second to the pastor, the head boss, my resignation just as he was about to give me my promotion. And when I tell you that was, I wasn't convinced at all that I was making the right decision. I just didn't feel like I had another choice. Like I had been so beat up inside that this was not what I was supposed to do for the rest of my life that I had to step away. And that's why the freelancer thing becomes a huge thing because now I've stepped away from two positions and now there is no way to go back into a third. Now I really have to make this work as a musician. And I'm playing for some blues club for $50 and some fish dip every night. And I'm like, this is not going to work. My wife and my kids at this point, I had 3 kids at this point. I don't know how to do this. So I start calling friends and asking them, how do you do this? Like, what are you doing? Are you doing contracts? Like, I hadn't done like professional gigs, as you call them, gigs, right? Music gigs in almost 10, 15 years at that point. So I literally had to figure this out. What do you do? Contracts? Who do you call? I can't just keep playing at this place all the time and expecting this to elevate my career. So they started to tell me, you know what? Number one, they still play the church. So I didn't have to worry about that being like a dividing line. I wasn't sacrificing my faith. And then secondly, you have to get serious about the business. Yes, you have to have a business card. Yes, you have to have a profile. Yes, you have to have your website. All these things that I didn't necessarily want to deal with became like the necessity. And it was from talking to other people in the community that eventually became my podcast and, talking to people. I didn't even know that they were this plugged in until I got them outside of their like comfort zone and we start getting real. So the way I made it through becoming a freelance professional musician and artist where I didn't have to rely only on a 9 to 5 was by talking to other people. It was the community that gave me the information that I needed to navigate this industry. And honestly, for anyone that's feeling like, oh, I want to try to, don't start with the how, start with the who. Who can you talk to that already has the information you need that can guide you? That would be the number one thing I could tell anybody that's kind of trying to navigate freelancing and going into your own thing versus just trying to like feel your way out and do it by yourself.
You help creatives treat their art to treat it like a business, and you help them push creative blocks, right? Because sometimes you get stuck. So when you hit a wall in your own work, what does that look like? And what practice or principle do you use that pulls you back or moves you
So
forward? Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's both. I think I love the fact that you just said it. It's kind of like you have to go back to what you know, what you believe, what you love, what inspires you, and then you have to move forward to either the small win or the small step of faith or small bit of progress. So you don't have this huge mountain in front of you that you created that you can't scale because you want to get to the top of whatever it is, whatever the project is, whatever it is. So I think it's both. So I love that you just mentioned it because I do have a small little resource that I offer. I think also on Amazon for free called Breakthrough the Block: 5 Ways to Renew Your Inspiration. So when it happens to me, I have to remember the same thing. And I love telling this story because it goes back to my parents and it goes back to children's books. So let me be kindergarten teacher for a second. Um, the first chapter, a little, it's actually not even a chapter, it's just a small little a blog post. The first section of it says that the first thing you have to do is to get your so what, get back to your so what. And the book is called Slugger Sal's Slump. You have to say it so slow so you can say all that. So Slugger Sal is a baseball player, T-ball, whatever, little league player, and he's knocking home runs, and he's the best player on the team until he's not, until he starts going through this. I can't hit the ball, I can't do anything right, and he goes to his mother. He's like, "I'm going to quit. I'm horrible." And his mother says to him, again, this is crazy that I still remember this story after 5 years old. Whenever my mom read this to me, so what if you can't hit the ball? You can still do blank. So what if you haven't hit the ball and so what? So what if? So she changed the what ifs. What if I can't do this? What if I never come up with an idea? What if this doesn't work? What if this entrepreneurial idea goes haywire? To so what if? It kind of goes back to Tim Ferriss. I'm a fan of Tim Ferriss in the 4 Hour Work Week, and he has this doomsday plan. If the worst happens, what would you do? And most times people can write out, well, I would do something. So there's never a time where you're not out of options. So as a creative, my so what is, so what if I don't have an idea that can create 5 paragraphs? I can write 3 words. So what if I don't have a song idea right now? I can, hum a few bars and go listen to some music. So what if is like my number one thing to get out of that kind of, oh my gosh, I can't come up with anything. Nothing's happening. The revenue's not moving. Whatever that idea is, I have to go to the so what if so that I can get to that small win that I can achieve, and it puts the agency back in my hands. And like I said, a children's book is still echoing in my head 50 years later that still allows me to get through those blocks.
I love that example. So tell me a little bit about your books and your podcasts.
So all of that came out of, again, I mentioned that moment, that watershed moment that I was like, okay, so I'm going to give up my career again and just walk into this new life of being a freelance musician and not having any full time. And I, putting air in quotes full time because I believe I'm a full time, artist all the time, but in terms of a 9 to 5 or something like that. And so at that point, as I mentioned, I started interviewing some of my friends, asking them questions. And I said, you know what, maybe I should write a pamphlet. And it was like literally in my bedroom, I started writing out 7 letters, I should say, that spelled out service. It was an acronym for service. Stay connected to God, establish your priorities, respect the business, visualize your goals, invest in your craft, challenge yourself to grow, and evangelize through your gift. Now, I thought it was just going to be a pamphlet. I literally thought I'm going to write a 5. I don't know. I don't know why I even said pamphlet. Who hands out pamphlets? Nobody. But that's what I thought it was going to be. That turned into the book that became the beginning of my entire platform because those 7 steps, I had to write out chapters. My wife kept me going. She's like, 500 words, just right. Stop overthinking it. I did a Kickstarter. We raised the money to publish it. And that became my first self-published book, God and Gigs: Succeed as a Musician Without Sacrificing Your Faith. Because that was the problem I was trying to solve for myself, I figured I could solve it for other musicians who were like me, who were in the Christian church, in the Christian community, but felt like there was like this disconnect between their faith and working in the mainstream arts and entertainment space. That's where that came from. Now, my problem was I realized some musicians don't like reading books. Some musicians like me, like, I would just like to listen to things. So like, oh, I guess I need to do a podcast because that's audio. So a year later, I started doing the God and Gig show out of my parents. Then at the time I was on vacation. I was in their garage and I just hooked up a quick Zoom thing, whatever it was, right before the pandemic, and started that. Now, 400 episodes later, that's become kind of like my bread and butter because I became a podcaster without realizing I was becoming a podcaster. And then all the resources that come along with that, God and Gigs, is all about helping creators become the creators that they were created to be. So we added on devotionals. I now have a couple of devotionals on the YouVersion app, as you mentioned, which is the biggest Bible. Has been downloaded, I think, 1 billion times all over the world. So for those who are, Bible readers, that is like a resource where I can like help them and reach them with stuff that helps them with their creative inspiration. And then the community. So long story short, my one little moment of a pamphlet became a mission. And the mission is to help other people do what I do and do it in the way that really helps them fulfill all the priorities that they have in front of them and not feel like they have to divide themselves into these little packets that they can't connect so that they can fully be who they are. And that's honestly what I'm trying to do with every single one of those platforms. But it's been a joy.
I think it's great that you have different platforms because some people prefer to read, others prefer to listen, and you can even repurpose some of that very same content for that other format. So it's a way for the creator to also be able to just share that message and amplify that message by having different formats where people can tune in or read or listen to.
100%.
So where can we find you online?
Well, if anything regarding God and Gigs kind of piques your interest, the faith side, the creative side, the entrepreneurial side, how you connect the dots between those three. Basically, if you're right now on any app that you're listening on, just go in that app and type in God and Gigs. It will pop up. Thankfully, that name has not been borrowed by anybody. And so if you type in God and Gigs anywhere on the internet, you will find us and you'll go to our godandgigs.com site or our podcast and or our devotional or our written content. Now, if you want to find stuff about me, that's a little different because as you can see, I have all these things going on. So I do have a separate kind of side where I have Alan C. Paul, where I talk about my podcasting. I talk about my music. I kind of do a little bit more of the coaching side outside of the faith space. So that's where I want to make sure people realize that it's also there. If you're not a musician, artist, creative, that's kind of navigating that space, and you just want to hear about being an entrepreneur, being a freelance creator or content creator, I do share at alancpaul.com. I'm working on that to get that a little more clear because I do so many other things that sometimes it's hard to keep it all going. But yeah, those are the two places people can find me, godandgigs.com or alancpaul.com.
And so what is your next milestone?
This is a great question because I sometimes am nervous at the same way that I was nervous about committing to leaving that my first teaching profession, and then nervous about stepping away from a full-time, church position. It's the same way I'm now at kind of like a crossroads with all of this that I have, because I feel even more responsibility to steward it well, to take care of it, to not just throw out everything and say, oh, well, I need to do this next. But I also know I can't stay the same. So I would say my next milestone is to properly step into the second half of my life, to properly help people who are also at this nexus of, I have a dream, but I'm not necessarily sure how to flesh it all out, and to do so in a way that shows them that I can go the way while I show the way. So I got to go there myself first, Sheila. I'm going to have to figure out, how do I build up my podcasting coaching in a way that feels natural, that I don't become one of these scam artists that just says, go do it. I want to talk about podcasting more, but I want to do it in a way that's natural and authentic. So I do want to speak more. I do want to coach more. I do want God and Gigs to reach more people in the arts and entertainment space, because I keep reading about people who are still struggling with this whole faith and creativity thing, which I thought, honestly, that it was saturated. I thought that I was done, that there was nothing else to share. And now it's like, wait a minute, there's still people dealing with the issue that I wrote a book about 10 years ago. So maybe I should keep talking about that. So I do look for the growth of the God and Gigs brand. I do look for podcasting and my ability to help other creators to grow. And 90% of this, honestly, comes back to family. I've got a granddaughter now. I've got a wife that I'll be married to almost 30 years. I'm looking forward to enjoying that season and figuring out how to be a granddad, how to be someone that can enjoy this second half of their life and keep all of these things going so that I can continue to be a husband, a father, a creative, and forgiven.
Well, I love all that. So you've shared so much in this one conversation that we've had, and I appreciate you and your time. What is that one key message or tip that you want to leave our listeners with today?
I've thought about this many times, and it always feels like you can't come up with a perfect, line that will help anybody. But there is something that I've always kind of come back to when I feel that I don't know what to do next in content creation, in writing, and anything. And there's three S's: make someone smile, serve someone, solve their problem. That's basically, if we do that as human beings every day, make someone smile, be a good person, be a good human, serve someone, pick up their trash, whatever that is, whatever that thing is that serves them at the time that maybe is not your comfort zone, but you step out of your comfort zone to kind of serve them in a way that would make them feel seen and acknowledged. And then solve someone's problem. Usually that comes down to your own gifting, right? I can't solve a problem that I haven't solved for myself, but once I see how I solved it for myself, I can solve it for you. And so that would be the one thing I would say for anyone in any stage of your business, any stage of life, any stage of trying to figure out what to do next. If you answer those three S's, how can I make someone smile, serve them, and solve their problem? You're probably going to find the best next step.
Well, you just made me smile, so you got two to go.
I hope I've served you, and I hope I'm solving someone's problem.
Thank you for being a guest on Milestone Moments in Business and Leadership.
My pleasure. It's been absolutely so much fun being on.
Thank you for tuning in today. If this story resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you have a story of your own that you'd like to share, or have ever thought about becoming a published author, visit 5milestones.com to be a guest on the show. One conversation is all it takes to become a published author. You have a story that matters. It's time to tell it.